Welcome to Light and Shadow. I'm your host, Maya Washington. It's time to bring some inspirational sports stories out of the shadows and into the light. Welcome. Today's guest is Susan Donnelly. Susan Donnelly loves running. She loves it enough to have run over 100 100-mile races, more than most anyone else in the world. She loves it enough to have won races outright and finished 3 100-mile races more than any other woman and almost any man. Susan's ultimate goal is to help people do things that they wouldn't have thought possible. She regularly offers coaching to runners and everyday people looking to live their best life. Welcome, Susan.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. So, Susan, I have to say you have had this incredible career in the ultra marathon world. And I have to start by asking you about those words that you live by and that mindset that keeps you going. You have a saying, you are capable of far more than you can imagine. So tell me what you mean when you say we are capable of far more than we can imagine.
Yeah, it is, as you said, it's really something I live by, and it is really getting to the fact that we put limits on ourselves. And if we can clear away those limits, we can do so much that we couldn't imagine. And some of those limits, most of those limits are in our head. So that's where the imagination comes from. We can, I've proven it to myself in my life so many times that I know it's true. And I can see it in so many other people, so many other runners that they have doubts about what they can do. And yet if they just let themselves believe, if they just could imagine themselves doing it, a lot of times they can do it. So, and the other half of that is that we think we have limits, and I have seen people pass through what they thought were their limits and go way beyond that. And there's really nothing holding us back but ourselves. So that's comforting to know because we can change that.
Now, one thing I have to say about your sport is, for me, as someone who had the blessing of getting to witness you cross the finish of your 100th mile at the Superior Trail a few years ago, and to be introduced to that world and to just see what a hard knocks, grimy, gritty approach and lifestyle you ultra runners lead. And I think with these extreme races that you and your friends and colleagues in the sport undertake, most of us regular folks who consider ourselves moderately athletic, and even those who are extremely athletic, I'm sure there's even marathon runners for whom maybe you could attempt to imagine on your bucket list running one 100-mile race. But the fact that you have made this a lifestyle, and you averaged about 10 100-mile finishes every year, that in 12 months, you are doing this about 10 times. So that's about a race a month. And when you're not doing the 100-mile in the context of a race, you are running in your community and your home state and hometown. And you have accomplished so much that I just want to give our audience a sense of, to try to wrap your head around. Again, bucket list, run one 100-mile race in your lifetime. You have, just to kind of go through the highlights of what you've accomplished, you've won double top 100 twice overall. You were the first finisher, and each time you were the only woman and the oldest competitor. Get it? You completed the Bigfoot 200-mile race and the Moab 240-mile race twice. You've accomplished first place female in the Superior Trail as the first woman 4 times, Zumbro as first woman 4 times, Georgia Jewel 100, the Lovett 100, and you have finished. I'm going to run out of steam going through your accomplishments. You have also finished the Superior Trail 100 19 times. 19 times you have done the Superior Trail 100. You have been in that race and earned the honor of being the second highest number of finishes in that race, more than any other female who has completed the Superior Trail. You have also completed the Massanutten 100 18 times. You got the 4th highest number of finishes on that race and more than any other female again. You've done the Javelina 100 12 times. You completed 26 different 100-mile courses in the U.S. and overseas, and you have run more 100-mile races than any other distance of all of the possibilities of 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, or ultras. So this is an art form for you. This is a passion. This is a commitment that you have made to this sport, to pushing your body and your being and your spirit to its ultimate capacity many, many times. So tell me, how did you get started?
Oh, gosh. I got started actually running in high school. I got started running around my neighborhood as a kid when I was little. I loved playing tag. I loved the running part. And I was faster than most of the other neighborhood kids. And I just really loved the running. And when I got to junior high school and all my cohorts, all the people I was with were kind of going off and joining clubs, their first clubs, choir or art or whatever. I didn't really see one I wanted to join until I noticed some kids running around the track. And I thought, I asked somebody and I found it was a team. You could be on this team. And I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. And so I signed up and I didn't know what I was doing. And I think I was probably running in a pair of white Keds at the time. And it was way before Nike. And I loved it. And I had a good coach who encouraged me, and there was nothing. I mean, we were competitive. We competed against the other schools, and that was the first time I'd ever done that. And it was so interesting. And then I got into high school, and I was still on the team. I still loved it, but it was much more about who was the best on the team and who was going to go to state and all that. And it was a little bit more competitive, but I still loved the running. And I noticed that I was in the track team. I was in the mile run, and I noticed that the longer the distance, the better I got. And the mile was the end. And the guys the boys were given like a 2-mile race. Well, we couldn't have that. The girls couldn't run the 2-mile race. And I always wanted to try that 2-mile race because I thought, I think I could do really well at that. But at the time we couldn't run that, and we couldn't even run as far as the guys in cross country. They were allowed to run farther than us. And I didn't really like that, but that's just the way things were. And at the end of high school, my coach at the time came to me unasked and said, "Don't bother trying out for the college team." And I thought, well, I hadn't thought about trying out for the college team, but now I won't. Okay, because I know I'm just kind of middle, I'm not the best on the team. I'm just kind of, mid-pack. And so I didn't. When I got to college, I didn't. And I didn't know, this was in the 80s, and there weren't that many races around, and I didn't know a whole lot about going out and doing road races. And so I just stopped running for like 2 years. I just stopped running because I didn't have any framework or reason to do it. And I was in school and I had things to do at school. And so then I was in engineering school. I was having a tough time with it. And as a female in the engineering school in the 80s. And I asked myself one day, what was I doing the last time I was happy? And the thing that came to my mind was while I was running. I was running every day. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to start running every day. So I started back. And I think I started at maybe 1 mile. I thought, wow, that was long. and I just worked my way up to about 9 miles a day. And I thought, oh, this is pretty good. And then I found some road races to do and started doing those. And I eventually worked up to a marathon, and that was thrilling, the Atlanta Marathon. Very thrilling. And I started running marathons, but then I got tired of those because it was kind of a never-ending pursuit of a better time or, and finish. If you're running big marathons, you're number 1,024 out of, 3,000. Place doesn't really matter that much. So mostly you're running for a better number, which is kind of, after a while, I really questioned. It just didn't feel exciting to me. It was to beat the crap out of myself mentally and physically just to get a better number. For what? It didn't sync up with me. It didn't make me excited. And I started looking around, and I remembered reading something I had read in college. This was after college. I remember something I'd stumbled upon in college where I'd read about a 100-mile race. And I'd seen this photo of this famous runner running this 100-mile race. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, I've got to do that. And I had shelved the idea. I thought, I need to start training for that. And so I started training for it, didn't know what I was doing, had no idea. There were no books. There's no internet. Had no idea, just kind of guessed based on what I did for marathons. And I picked out a race. I found a 50-mile race in an obscure little running magazine. I thought, that's the one I'm going to go do. And I put in all this training, and about a month before the race, my appendix burst. And I had to get cut. It was really messy. I walked around with it for like a week or so without knowing it. And so I had to get surgery for that, and that took me out of the race. I didn't go. And I thought, well, maybe I can keep my training up and do another race. And some of the scar tissue broke apart. So a couple of months later, I had to go in for another emergency surgery. And I thought, oh, forget it. Maybe someday. And so after I recovered from that, I got back to normal run. I just kind of got back into, doing marathons and 10Ks and half marathons and kind of the normal road running stuff. And then I started, and I was working as an engineer, trying to be the person I thought I was supposed to be. And, running ultramarathons was not part of that. Nobody I knew ran ultramarathons. And I moved back to Tennessee, where I was from, and somebody happened to mention, hey, this guy, I must have said something about ultramarathons, and somebody said, hey, we know a guy in town who does those. And so I found him and talked to him and started training with him. He eventually became a great friend. And there was a small group of us in this town, the only ultra runners in Tennessee at the time. There were like 10 or so of us. We started training together, and I ran my first ultra, which was a 40-miler. And then I ran some 30-milers, and then I just worked myself up in distance. I thought, well, I've got this 30-mile thing down and this 40-mile thing down. I can do those. What about a 50-mile? And I finally went back to that one I had registered for all those years ago, and I did that one. And I got pretty good at that. And then I thought, okay, I really like these. And these were all on trail, too, which was fantastic. That it's like running around in the yards when you were a kid. I loved it. And so I got good at them, and I was doing them. I thought, I know that the ultimate, quote unquote, ultimate distance for an ultramarathoner is the 100-mile race. That's kind of the classic. It's like marathons for road runners. And I thought, I'm not going to consider myself a real ultra runner until I do that. I know I just won't. And I know if it's out there and I don't do it, I know I'm avoiding it. So I just need to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off and do it. And so I signed up for one. And again, trained for it, not really knowing what to expect. The internet, baby internet, was out there, and I found some listservs that had some information on them, and read everything I could possibly find. And signed up and got a subscription, hard copy subscription to Ultra Running magazine, and I learned everything I could, and I just went and I winged it. And I finished.
And just so that our audience, who's maybe never experienced a 100-mile race or could even conceive of, can you just talk about painting the picture of the fact that you're running 100 miles straight, that the race starts in the morning on day one and that you're finishing on day two, meaning you are running all day, all night in all kinds of weather and terrain. And so can you just talk about what that experience is physically in terms of not just the stamina it would take to run an ultra distance, but adding to that sort of the elements and the extreme cold and extreme heat and getting your rhythm throughout that experience. Can you just paint a picture for those who maybe think it's like the marathons we see on TV where people are standing on the side of a street that's blocked off and you just kind of run around the downtown area and you have some Gatorade and people clap for you and you're tired and you collapse. But 100 miles in a forest or in a mountain trail, can you talk about, just from a practical standpoint, some of the things you encounter on the way?
Sure. So there are some urban ultras where you just run in circles for a set number of hours, but that's not my forte. My forte is the hard stuff and the mountainous stuff on trails. And these are like hiking trails. They're just typical hiking trails, sometimes some gravel road. And typically the format is just like you said. You start early on Saturday morning and you run all day, rain, shine, sleet, snow, heat, bizarre humidity. It doesn't matter. The race is generally not going to be called off for weather of any type. You just have to deal with it or not. So you're running all day. Then you put a headlamp on, and you keep running all night with a headlamp. And you lose a night of sleep and finish. Most of us mortals finish sometime on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, depending on the course and how long it is. And you have to be done in a certain amount of time. Like generally it's like for 100 miles, it's generally 30 hours or 32 hours, 34 hours, something like that, 36. They vary. But you do have a cutoff time, and there will be aid stations along the way. And an aid station is a place where you can get food. They will have some food for you. They will also have water and fluids for you. And you can generally, most of the time, you can leave a bag of gear called a drop bag at the aid stations. And you want to pack, this is where the strategy comes in. You want to pack what you think you're going to need when you hit that particular aid station. Because if you're running point to point, that's the only time you will see that bag. So you don't want to guess wrong and put, say, your rain jacket in a 20-mile bag when you are really going to need it at mile 80. So there's some strategy there about what to put in what drop bag. And so you get to these aid stations and you get something to eat, something to drink, take care of anything like blisters or anything that needs to be taken care of, get whatever you need out of your drop bag, and then you keep going. You get right back out on the trail, and you make that stop at the aid station as quick as possible because the clock is still running. And some aid stations will have a cutoff time. If you arrive after this time, they will pull you off the course because you're going to be too slow to finish the whole race within the overall cutoff time. So cutoff time is a big thing we worry about. how we're doing against cutoff time, what our cushion of time is against cutoff time is a big deal. And there are all kinds of there are so many variables in this race. Imagine running on a hiking trail. There's weather. A trail can get really muddy, which slows you down. It can be very hot, which slows you down also. And you have to know how to manage your body, and you have to watch about managing the time, and you have to pay attention to your gear and so many different things. One of the things I love about doing these races is it's very much like a puzzle, because you have so many things that you have to think about and plan for and have to go right for you to get to the finish line. So I love the puzzle and strategy aspect of it. So you have to manage your brain. That's a lot of what I coach on. And let's see, people also ask, before I finish, people also frequently ask, well, where do you go to the bathroom? Well, generally, just like you would on a hiking trail, there's plenty of trees out there. And, you find a good tree, good private tree is generally the way it works, unless you happen to be at an aid station and there's there's some kind of trailhead bathroom there, but generally it's behind the tree. So you lose a night of sleep, you go to the bathroom in the woods, and you're running in all kinds of weather. It can rain the whole entire time. It has snowed on me. I've had mind-numbing humidity. I've run in 102 degree heat. It just varies, and that's part of the equation. You just deal with it.
And so it seems that you have chosen clearly an extreme sport that's pushed you to your limits, and you've experienced extreme everything. And I would say you and I are of different generations, but traditionally these aren't really the things young ladies grow up to do.
No.
So can you talk about how you've challenged traditional ideas of what women can and should do with their lives and their leisure time, and ways that you either embraced the expectations that were laid out for you as a young woman, or challenged some of those expectations in order to fulfill this destiny that clearly this is your passion, this is what you were meant to do and accomplish, and you are inspiring so many people of all backgrounds, of all gender identities, to be their best and to tackle their own metaphorical 100-mile races in life.
It's something I really spend a lot of time thinking about, and I'm not sure that there's a real watershed moment, which is probably what most women experience. I was thankfully raised by parents who didn't expect me to be one thing or another, and they actually encouraged me to go to engineering school, which turned out to be a wonderful thing, because it was hard. I wasn't necessarily welcomed, like I said, in the 1980s as a female in engineering school. But when I got out, I thought, if I can do that, I can do anything. So, I got out of school with an engineering degree, which already made me a little bit different at the time. Thankfully, it's more common now. I love seeing that. But also, and I didn't realize this until years later, I was making life decisions about where to live, and I was trying to decide, what am I going to do with my life? I don't necessarily want to just live by default and have things happen to me. I want to choose what I'm doing with my life, and I had to figure out how to do that. And it didn't. And I tried things. I really just tried things, and I tried to. Really, I have always tried to think for myself and make my own decisions. What's right for? I'm not just going to follow people because that's the right thing to do or the popular thing to do. So always making my own choices. And one of my other sayings, as you remember reading, I'm sure, is to run your own race. You cannot run a 100-mile race successfully by copying somebody else or trying to just follow somebody the whole time. It is not going to work. You're going to irritate the other runner. And really, to be successful at this, you're going to have to make your own decisions about how fast you're going to run, how slow you're going to run, because pacing is a whole thing. You don't want to run too fast, but you can't run too slow or you'll get pulled at an aid station. You have to make your own decisions about gear. You have to make your own decisions about what you eat, how much you drink, what you drink. No one can make all those decisions for you. So to be successful at this, you have to learn to do that stuff yourself. And I think that really carried forward from my early life of, as a young woman, out independently working in what's typically a man's field at the time, engineering, making my own decisions slowly but surely, one at a time, about how I wanted to live my life. And it turned out to be a strength in 100-mile races. And I didn't think back until years later, but besides my sister and I, all the other women in my extended family got married and had at least 3 kids, 2 to 3 kids, some up to 5. And were homemakers, did not have professions outside the home. And that's, I am glad my mother stayed home to raise me. That was wonderful. But I didn't realize how much I was stepping away from my traditional family path until I stopped years later and looked back. So that was really, really fascinating. And it was just small decision by small decision. Like I said, no true watershed moment, but just a commitment to myself to be true to myself.
So I think that really reminds me of this blog post you have. And for our audience, Susan has a really great website and blog. So if you are a runner or you are just fascinated by this world that Susan exists in, that I have grown fascinated by, I don't know if in my lifetime I will accomplish an ultra, but stranger things have happened because you're such an inspiration. But I would encourage our audience to check out Susan's website. It's susaniDonnelly.com. So susaniDonnelly.com, because what you just said about being true to yourself, that you had this early commitment to self. One of the beautiful blog posts you had earlier during this sort of COVID-19 situation we're in, I think it was an April post, where you wrote this beautiful letter that you entitled Dear Yesterday Self. And you started it by saying, Dear Yesterday Self, first off, I love you. I think there is something so magical and so powerful about the concept of self-love and the idea of being in harmony with our past self and our future self. And so based on what you're describing and how differently you moved in life compared to the other women you grew up with or were surrounded by, that you made choices that were the appropriate and right choice for yourself.
Yeah, I would have to say, I hadn't thought about it in that context necessarily, but I would have to say that's self-love, to stick to your guns and make the decision that's right for you, time after time after time. And that doesn't mean it's always contrary to everybody else. That just means it's the one that's right for you. Where did I learn that? I would almost have to say from my parents growing up. So I'm going to give them some credit. Has to be some from my parents, because they always encouraged me to be, they never said, oh no, you shouldn't be reading books. You should be playing with Barbies. They let me play. My favorite toys when I was a kid was a cowboy and an Indian, not Barbies. I was not interested in Barbies. I had some plastic animals and blocks. So, and they never said, don't do that, do this. They just let me be me. And I am more and more grateful every year of my life for that. And also, when I was growing up, when I was little, it's definitely in elementary school, I just learned to read. I stumbled upon boys' adventure books. It was boys with dogs, generally going out in the woods, finding a poacher or something and saving the world, saving something, from doom. And that was the general theme of all these books. And of course, I loved animals. I loved horses and dogs. And so I was fascinated with this. And the stuff that they did, they're out in the woods with these dogs, and, they would rescue somebody, like I said, or, stop a poacher from killing a beautiful animal or something. And I was just so fascinated with all of that and saving the world and making the world a better place and doing the right thing. And I didn't get that I was a girl and I wasn't supposed to be doing that. So that's how I pictured my life being for a long time when I was little. And, of course, my parents never said, you can't be that. You need to be reading girl books, not boy books. So I think I probably just started out that way, and nobody told me I couldn't, thankfully.
You are definitely a role model for so many kids, an example of someone who's really found adventure in life. And now with your coaching business, you actually are kind of doing your part to impart some of the wisdom and the knowledge that you've had, but to encourage and inspire other people. And I would say in that way, you are doing that. You are saving the world one race at a time by encouraging all people, but especially women, to get into your sport, to have the things that they need to be successful. So can you talk about some of the things and initiatives you're working on to advocate for others and to bring new runners into the sport?
Yeah, I'm really, and very well put. That is my version of saving the world is helping other runners, especially women, see what they can achieve in this sport. And by seeing what they can achieve in this sport, that translates into their lives. The skills you learn in completing a 100-mile race and the strengths you build translate into every other part of your life. You to be mentally strong enough to do that is to be mentally strong to do other things. So that's really the philosophy behind my coaching. And the people I like to coach are the ones who are getting into it, who are not sure that they can do it. And it's not necessarily 100-mile races. It's all ultras, all runners, but they're not necessarily sure they can do the distance. They have a lot of doubts. They don't know how. And they don't know how to deal with all the mental hurdles that you have to deal with to get yourself to the finish of a 100-mile race, because your brain will tell you at many points in time that this is ridiculous. You need to stop. So those are the skills I help my clients learn and build. And I'm really repackaging my coaching right now I'm really excited about it. I'm taking this COVID time to repackage my coaching in a way that's a little easier for people to handle. I'm looking at different options. So stay tuned on that. And my goal is to eventually get some training out, some online classes out. That's a long range goal, but right now I'm repackaging my coaching for some of the more specific different needs of my clients to help them do what they want to do and see that they can do it.
Now, you talked about the way that the mindset and your mind wanting to tell you through this process that you can't do it, or kind of nudging you or forcing you to get back into that still small voice in you that's going to beast it anyway and is going to go for it. But there is that part of our mind that can creep in way of doubt or just extreme fatigue. So as you have evolved in your sport and you've accomplished so much, have you noticed how that voice of opposition comes up in your mind on the trail? If it's if it sounds different or feels different than it did when you were a younger, earlier career runner, or are you still coming up against some of the same mental obstacles as you approach races?
Yeah, it has changed a lot, because that is one of the reasons I started coaching was that when I got into the sport and I fell in love with it immediately, especially the 100-mile distance, I thought, I've arrived. This is it. This is what I want to do. I started looking around and watching people. First of all, in my first, I forget the number, but in my first maybe 5 or 6 ultras, I had like 3 DNFs, which is a do not finish. That is like, you don't want that as an ultra runner. That's like you getting to mile 50 and quitting, or having to stop, or being pulled because you're going too slow. So you do not want a DNF. That's bad. And I had a couple DNFs early on, but because for very preventable reasons, I just quit at certain points. And there was nothing factual stopping me. It was all in my head. And I kind of thought at the time, I remember thinking, oh, this is okay. Everybody has DNFs. It's just to be expected. And I had a couple more, and I thought, no, I'm just tired of this. I'm quitting on myself. That's bull. I'm not taking the excuse anymore. And I thought, that's it. Decision made. I am not letting myself quit. I'm going to, I established a rule for myself. I'm going to have to be like bleeding or have a huge injury that is preventing me from finishing, or I'm going to have to be pulled from time. Otherwise, I am continuing on in the race. And once I made the decision, everything changed. Once I made the commitment to myself, everything changed. But in the meantime, I watched all these other runners just quit. And it was fascinating to me, especially after my own experience, it was fascinating to me, these talented runners, these runners who had trained super hard and had all the ability in the world, and they didn't finish because of something they were thinking. It was absolutely fascinating to me, all that investment and all that hard training and all the buildup and the excitement and looking forward to it. And then they get to mile 62 and they decide they're done. And then the regret later on, after the race is over, the regret is hard. Because in the back of your mind, a lot of people say, no, it's okay. But it is hard. And, that you quit, I can say from personal experience, you quit on yourself. So that's really what got me to coaching and what I really like to help people with. And there are so many points in a race and so many ways you can think, well, I'm last. I should just quit, or I'm going really slow. I should just quit, or I'm tired. Like you said, I should just quit. Or some runners are scared of the nighttime part of the running. And it's not, there's nothing to be scared of. They're just scared of the unknown of it. And there's a lot of scared of the unknown, fear of the unknown, where it seems like it would be smarter just to quit now rather than maybe have a harder experience down the trail that you can't handle. So a lot of it is about what I can handle and what I can't handle. How tired am I? And the commitment to yourself, why you got in the race in the first place, and those two things competing with each other in your head.
Wow. I think we are definitely in one of those times where we all might have a little discomfort with the unknown.
Yes.
What's happening globally during this pandemic. So thank you for that wisdom, because whether you are a runner or not, I think that really hits home at times like this, that we can battle with ourselves about, can we do this another day, another week? Can we make it? And you are evidence of the fact that humans are capable of extraordinary things, and that it is ultimately does come down to that mindset that we must have, right, to survive, to thrive, and to persevere. So as we kind of wrap things up, I would love to know, I understand this time of year is a busy season for you with races, and you kind of are going from one race to the next, and it's a time where you really get to participate in your passion full force, but the current pandemic has made it not quite possible for you to enjoy races in the way that you're accustomed to. So what are you doing to keep sane right now? And are there any practices or things you've incorporated into your life that you've done sort of in response to these current times and the shelter-in-place situation that you think you'll continue?
Oh, so many things. And there are so many things, you're right, that translate directly from running the 100-mile race. As a runner, I have no races to run. And I'm totally at peace with that. So one thing I've done is made peace with the unknown of what's tomorrow going to bring, because it very much like a race, the miles ahead of me, I have no idea what those are going to be like. And I have no idea what the future in our daily life is going to be like either. So I've consciously made peace with that. I also am doing what is my default. I've defaulted back to my I'm trying to think what I call it, my basic mileage. And so when I'm not racing and just in town, and, if I take a month off, if I'm just putting in normal long runs, my normal long run is, somewhere between 25 and 30 miles on a weekend day. And so what I've done is I've been doing that on Fridays because fewer people on the trails that I have to deal with. So it's a very practical thing, but it also frees up the rest of the weekend for me.
Thank you so much, Susan, for sharing this time with me and our audience. I really appreciate your sharing your inspirational story.
Oh, Maya, it's been a delight, and it's been a delight to talk to you. It was a delight to share that race with you, and it's been an extra delight to talk to you afterwards like this. Thank you.
So for our audience, if you are enjoying what we're doing, please tell other people. I encourage you to like, share, subscribe, and we'll continue to bring you some great inspirational sports stories on light and shadow. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.